This animal cannot be killed. Not by heat, not by cold, not even by space. It is smaller than a grain of sand, and it may be the toughest creature alive. You walked past millions today, in the moss on your wall. Here on Wild Planet TV, the familiar stops being what it seems, so subscribe. You will meet an animal that survives being frozen, boiled, dried to dust, and blasted with radiation. An animal that has already been to space and come back alive. The secret to how it does it sounds like science fiction. Let us start with what this creature actually is. This is a tardigrade, though almost nobody calls it that. Most know it by a better name, the water bear. Under a microscope, it looks like a bear crossed with a caterpillar, a plump segmented body on 8 stubby legs. Each leg ends in tiny claws, like a bear at dust scale. German scientists named it the little water bear, and Italian priests named them Tardigrade, the slow steppers, for their walk. They are not insects or worms, but their own ancient branch of life. A full-grown adult is rarely over 0.5 millimeter long, smaller than the period at the end of this sentence. You need a microscope to see one, yet they are everywhere. They live in roof moss and tree lichen, in garden soil and deep-sea sand, on Himalayan peaks and under Antarctic ice, in hot springs, the open ocean, the gutter outside your window. Scientists find them on nearly every surface they check. A handful of damp moss can hold hundreds at once.
To find your own, you barely leave your front door. You soak a pinch of moss, then check the water drops under a lens. There they are, ambling through the water on 8 tiny legs. But their real trick is not where they live, it is what they survive. When conditions turn deadly, the water bear does what almost nothing else can. It effectively switches itself off. When its world dries out, it does not flee or fight. It pulls in its head and 8 legs and curls into a tiny barrel. Scientists call this shrunken shape a tun, an old word for barrel. In this state, it expels almost all its water. A living thing is mostly water. The tardigrade drops that to a few percent. Its metabolism, the whole chemistry of being alive, falls to near zero. By most measures, it is no longer alive in any normal sense. Not eating, not moving, not aging. It sits there as a dry speck, indistinguishable from dust. This trick has a name, cryptobiosis, meaning hidden life. The animal is not dead, it is paused, and it can hold that pause for a very long time. Dried tardigrades have revived after years in a museum drawer. In one case, tardigrades frozen in Antarctic moss revived after 30 years. They thawed, took in water, and simply carried on. When I first read that, I had to stop and read it again. It had spent 3 decades as a dry grain, then resumed its life. The moment water returns, the barrel swells. The head emerges, the legs unfold, and it walks away as if nothing happened.
A paused animal, it turns out, is almost impossible to destroy. Now for the part that made this creature famous. In that paused state, it endures things that should be impossible. Start with cold. It has survived near -270 degrees Celsius, close to absolute zero. That is colder than the dark between the stars, near the coldest possible. Now go the other way, heat. Dried tardigrades have survived heating past boiling. Some have endured brief exposure to around 150 degrees Celsius. Cold enough to freeze the galaxy, hot enough to cook, and it still walks away. Then there is pressure. The deepest ocean trench crushes with a force almost nothing survives. Tardigrades survive pressures several times greater than that trench. And they have survived the opposite, the total emptiness of a vacuum. Now the strangest one, radiation. A radiation dose that would kill a human many times over barely troubles it. They take hundreds, even thousands of times the dose lethal to us. Radiation harms by shredding the delicate molecules inside a cell. Somehow it shrugs off damage that would tear our cells apart. Together, it sounds like a creature from a comic book. Frozen, boiled, crushed, dried, irradiated, and still it comes back. No large animal on Earth comes remotely close. A dog, a beetle, a fish, any of them would have gone at step 1. The tardigrade treats each one as an inconvenience to sleep through, which raised an obvious question.
How far could it go? So in 2007, they sent tardigrades into space to find out. On a European mission, dried water bears rode up on a spacecraft's outer hull. Not sealed in a capsule, exposed directly to open space. That meant full vacuum, deep cold, and the raw radiation of the sun, unshielded. For any animal we know of, that combination is instantly fatal. The tardigrades were left in orbit for 10 days. Then the samples came back to Earth and were rehydrated. Many of the water bears revived. Some even survived the full blast of unfiltered solar radiation. With that, the tardigrade became the first animal known to survive open space. Not an astronaut in a suit, a speck of an animal against the void. And the story did not stop there. In 2019, a spacecraft crashed onto the surface of the moon. On board was an archive with thousands of dried tardigrades. The lander was destroyed on impact, but the tardigrades may have survived. Which means water bears may be lying on the moon right now, paused, dried, and waiting, on a world with no air and no water. They cannot wake up there because nothing will ever rehydrate them. But they may still be intact, holding their paused life in the dust. An animal from a patch of earth moss scattered across the moon. It is one of the strangest sentences in modern biology, and it is true. If that grips you like it gripped me, stay with me. The how is stranger still.
So how does an animal survive being dried to dust and frozen near absolute zero? For a long time, this was a genuine mystery. The first clue came from a sugar called trehalose. As they dry out, tardigrades flood their cells with this sugar. Water normally holds a cell's delicate machinery in shape. When the water leaves, that machinery should collapse and break. The sugar fills the gaps the water leaves and props everything up. But that is only part of it, and some barely use the sugar. The bigger secret was proteins found in almost no other animal, special tardigrade proteins that almost nothing else has. As the animal dries, these proteins do something remarkable. They turn the inside of each cell into glass. Not window glass, but a smooth solid with no liquid moving. The proteins set like syrup cooling into hard candy. Every fragile molecule is locked inside that glass, unable to break. The whole animal becomes a block of biological glass, frozen in time. When water returns, the glass dissolves and the machinery restarts. It is one of the most elegant survival tricks in nature. The water bear does not resist the damage of drying out. It turns its entire body to glass and waits for better days. If that image stayed with you, comment the word glass below so I know you are still here, because the next discovery could reach into your own body. Remember that radiation barely harms a tardigrade. For years, nobody understood how.
Then researchers studying one species found something no one expected, a protein that seems to physically shield the animal's DNA. Scientists named it damage suppressor, shortened to DSUP. DNA is the instruction manual inside every living cell. Radiation snaps the strands of that manual apart. This protein appears to wrap around the DNA like a cushion. It softens the blows, so far fewer strands break. That alone would be a fascinating piece of animal biology. But then the researchers tried something bolder. They put the tardigrade protein into human cells, and those human cells became more resistant to radiation. A gene from a moss-dwelling speck working inside human tissue. The possibilities that opens are hard to overstate. Think of protecting a cancer patient's healthy cells during radiation, or shielding astronauts on the long journey to Mars, or storing medicines dried out the way a tardigrade stores itself. None of this is finished science, and honest researchers are careful to say so. We are at the very beginning of understanding these proteins, but the direction is astonishing on its own. An animal that learned to survive the apocalypse, teaching us its methods. The toughest creature on Earth may end up in a hospital, keeping you alive. If that thought amazes you, send this video to someone who thinks small means unimportant. But here is the part the internet usually leaves out. The tardigrade is not an invincible superhero, and honesty matters here.
All of those miracles only happen in the dried, paused state. A tardigrade going about its normal life is surprisingly fragile. Active and full of water, it can be harmed like any tiny animal. It can be eaten, crushed, or simply starved. In everyday life, it walks through a film of water, feeding. It pierces plant cells or tiny creatures with needle-like spears. It is a gentle, unremarkable little animal that ambles and eats. The powers switch on only when the water vanishes and it curls up. And even that has limits. Not every tardigrade survives every extreme. Drying too fast can end them. Each round of pausing and reviving takes a toll on the body. They are champions of endurance, not of immortality. Active, a water bear may live only a few months. It is only the paused clock that stretches their story across decades. So the honest picture is stranger than the myth, not weaker than it.
This is not a creature that cannot die. It has learned, better than anything else alive, how to wait. It survives the unsurvivable by stepping outside of life for a while, and then stepping back in when the danger has passed. That is a fundamentally different kind of strength than we usually imagine. Which leaves us with a genuinely humbling thought. We tend to admire animals that are fast or fierce or powerful, the lion, the shark, the eagle. But the toughest animal we have ever found is none of those things. It is slow, soft, nearly blind, and smaller than a speck of dust.
No armor, no venom, no speed, no strength worth mentioning. It wins by doing the one thing those mighty animals cannot. It surrenders completely. And by surrendering, it survives. There is still so much we do not understand about it. We are only starting to map the proteins behind it. We do not know how many kinds exist, and new ones keep appearing. We do not know how long a paused tardigrade can last. Some scientists wonder whether it is centuries, not just decades. An animal we can hold on a fleck of moss and still cannot explain. It has quietly outlasted mass extinctions that erased far mightier creatures. It was here before the dinosaurs and will likely outlast us, not by fighting the world, but by knowing when to let go. So next time you see moss on a wall or a roof, remember what is almost certainly living inside it. An animal that has been to space and come home. An animal that can turn to glass and wait out the end of the world, hiding in plain sight in the green film we pass every day. The tardigrade rewrites what we think toughness even means. Not the biggest, not the strongest, not the fastest. The one that learned how to pause and simply wait everything out. Strength, it turns out, is sometimes just knowing how to endure. And if the hidden lives of small animals fascinate you, the next video goes somewhere you will not expect. We are going to talk about animals that get high on purpose. Dolphins have been seen passing a pufferfish between them, taking careful turns, using the toxin in its skin to reach an altered state, apparently just for the feeling. They may be the only animals besides us known to seek that experience for pleasure. It is one of the strangest things ever filmed in the ocean, and it is next. If this changed how you see an animal, subscribe. Every week we open a world almost nobody looks at twice.